Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Glow Up Method. This is the place where we discuss all things life transformation, personal growth, on this journey to live a life that makes you proud. Hi, my name is Natasha, and I am so lucky, blessed, and honored to be your host today. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about something. I love going back and getting to the foundation. Right now, I have a few projects I'm working on, and some of them I have direction and I have focus, and others I don't. And the ones that I do have the direction and focus on, I didn't always have it. And so what I really wanted to talk about, what is this key ingredient, this most crucial part to any of our journeys, or literally our existence at all, is our why. I talk about this a lot. Recognizing, discovering, and leaning into our whys is such a pivotal starting point for our journey. I've talked about on here before how, I could go to the doctors and they can say you have high blood pressure, you're pre-diabetic, you have fatty liver, you're essentially cutting years off your life. And it was like, yeah, so what, who cares? Like, in a sense, like for me personally, I didn't really have a life, and my life was serving everybody else and doing everything for everybody else. And while that was exciting, and while that did bring me joy and happiness, it just wasn't enough. Like, I was like, forget it. I mean, if all I do is, the little bit of joy I get is from eating, I'm not going to take that away too. And so my why to eat and my why to not make any changes with my health was really important. It's because I felt like I deserved it. I felt like every other area of my life I was serving and, putting everybody else above me. That here's this one thing that I'm like, forget it. I would rather live 10 less years of my life than be in misery eating boiled chicken and broccoli. I did that growing up as a kid and I hated it. And so I had this conception that being healthy, that, being fit meant I had to sacrifice a lot of things. And what I didn't really realize was not being healthy and not being fit, I also sacrificed a lot of things. And so discovering my why, it wasn't like I ever sat down, like I'm instructing you guys or suggesting you guys do here and was like, with a pen and a paper, like, what is my why? It came a lot more holistically. It came as it was supposed to come at the time it was supposed to come, which was really grateful. Like, I'm so grateful I knew that, because otherwise I would have been like, why didn't I do this sooner? I should have done this sooner. And I couldn't have. It wasn't the right time. It wouldn't have stuck for whatever reason. The stars and moon and a pandemic had to all align for me to have that clarity, for me to have that space, for me to have that courage to understand when I went and literally drove to the side of a mountain and no longer wanted to be here, because I was nobody. I was nobody. I just was this hodgepodge of everybody else that I thought they wanted me to be. And that person wasn't even real. And if I would make one person happy, on the other hand, I was pissing somebody else off. And all along inside, I was feeling lost and I was feeling unseen. I was feeling unheard, and not by anybody else. It's not their fault. It was my own. I buried myself so deep inside. Like I've talked about on here before, when I was a little girl, I would hide in a closet and barricade my door and barricade the closet and then bury myself in the closet and cover my mouth and cover my eyes. And I did everything I could to make myself small and unseen. And that little girl who was doing that to herself for whatever reasons, I mean, she had a traumatic life. There was fighting, there was arguing, there was a suicide attempt in front of her. There was teen parents. They were, doing the best they could. Like, it was just not easy. And there was no place for me to put all this turmoil and angst that was happening around me, except for internalizing it. And the best thing I can do, because everyone around gets hurt and yelled at and screamed at, is to make myself small, seen, and unheard. And then I'll be safe, right? And what I didn't know is, by trying to make myself safe, I was putting myself personally in a lot of harm. And I now know that connecting with that inner child, connecting with the various versions of me. I've talked about on here before. I have gone back, and this is all holistically. I didn't read it in a book. Later on I had, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a thing, you know, but it just felt like it was the right time and the right thing. Like all of a sudden I did this trauma timeline, and it was an exercise from my therapist, and it wasn't meant to be a trauma timeline. It was just meant to write like these injustices. But basically, I was like, I need to start from the beginning. Like, I can't start at 45-year-old me. There's so much that's been left unseen and unheard prior to that. So literally going back to day one of my life and going through these things. And like I said, I got to about age 9 and I was in shambles. I was in tears. I was like, can I please go give this little girl a hug? Like, no wonder. Like, it all makes so much sense when you look at it from a different perspective instead of just living the experience. And in that moment, I grew compassion for myself. I didn't, in a sense, feel sorry for myself, but I felt really sad, you know, where before the voices in my head was all about criticizing, was all about, you know, saying I wasn't good enough, was all about, in a sense, like I've said here, bullying myself. I am the worst bully to myself. There is nobody combined that could ever say or come close to saying the things that I've said within my head. And I'm so glad that I have befriended my bully. I am besties with my bully now. And really, my bully, I get it. I know it's annoying when you're bullied. It's more than annoying. It's devastating, right? But I understand my bully, myself, I was just hurting. And what do hurt people do? Hurt people. And my life's experience had taught me that there is a lot of hurt. And there was a lot of good too. But there was a lot of hurt that had no place to go but to bury itself within me. And so when I reached this pinnacle point where, you know, there was this moment of silence, there was this quiet because there was a pandemic, life had shifted. And everything around me seemed to be in chaos. And it was. The things that I could control, like making sure my kids were in school in time and had lunch and dinner, all those things were now uncertainties, you know? I had 4 kids and Chris here in a very small 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse. And I'm grateful I had that because I know there's people in this world that didn't even have that. So I can't sit here and be like, this is all I had. But let me tell you, I also had some daydreams of like, man, what it would be like to be in some palatial place with a pool and, you know, everybody has their own room kind of situation. But you have work going on. I was working. Chris was working and he's in IT. So you have people calling in who are trying to figure out how to do Zooms. And bless his heart, he's been to a lot of concerts. He talks really loud. And then I have my kids who are in school, and not only just in a traditional school, they are also in college. So you have classes going on from like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. And then you also have their social life because you know what? Although we're blessed and lucky that there were 6 of us here, because I know there were also people who were very alone during the pandemic that, you know, here we had this opposite experience. And especially for the kids where they weren't really alone. They still had their, you know, siblings, you know, we were playing games, we were doing activities, we're doing, you know, things within what we were permitted to do. Some things we weren't even permitted to do, you know, but we took walks, we took drives, and especially me. But I began to feel, even though I had all these people around all the time, I had never felt more unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. And in hindsight, I know they were all going through their own traumas too. But I was like doing everything I could to ensure the safety and the well-being of my family. Like I felt like a mama bird sitting on her nest, running to the store with a hoodie on and sunglasses and multiple gloves and wiping everything down. And I got the Lysol. And thank goodness I already like was an over shopper. So I had TP for days, but yet I still was trying to find the TP. I did everything I could do to protect my family. And I felt like I never received a thank you. I felt like nobody ever asked, like, how was your day? Or said, thanks, Mom, for keeping us safe. And I know that they're kids, and I know that Chris was having his own experience too, but I so needed that. I didn't have it within myself to be grateful and appreciative and be like, you did that, girl. Like, you made sure your ability to, like, always, stockpile and have things for a rainy day. See, it all paid off. Where some people made fun of you, including the people that are wiping their butts with the toilet paper you got. Like, you knew to do this and you did it, and you were able to better provide for your family without hysteria, during a pandemic that was unforeseen and very sudden. And so, I pride myself on that now. But before, I needed that validation externally. And when I wasn't getting it and I was still doing everything for everyone, I felt so low. I felt like there was no reason for my being. I was just a shell of a human. I had all these wonderful people around me that I helped. I helped them, do the things that I could do to help get them in college. I did the things that I could do to help make sure that they were in school. I did the things in a great community. I did the things I could to help build their business. But I was always the supporting act. I was always the wind beneath somebody else's wings. And my wings began to wither, and I was nothing. And so I drove to that mountain, and I had every intention of just saying, bye-bye, I'm done. I cannot do this anymore. Maybe there was an argument that happened, a few days I was doing like a test to see, well, I'm going to ask everybody, how's your day? And not one asked how mine was. When I'm, cooking and asking for people to come down for dinner, I'm not hungry. They come down late. And I just was needing this sense of community, this sense of belonging. I didn't feel like I belonged, even though I had so many people around me. I never felt more alone. And it was obvious to me as I sat on that mountain that I was a stranger to my own self. It was obvious to me that my why was there. I always wanted to be a good mom because I didn't have one in my life on a day-to-day basis. I always wanted to be this person that made up for that lack of, and that loneliness I felt as a child. And so I did everything I could to foster this dreamlike family that oftentimes was a nightmare. But I did everything I could with the best of intentions, right? When my kids were sick, I made sure that they were in the doctors. Unlike when I was sick, I had to make my own doctor appointments and take my own self to the doctor and see the faces of the receptionist and the nurses and the doctor looking at an 11, 12-year-old kid, probably debating if they should call CPS, explain and excuse why my dad wasn't there when my dad was working. And, I'm sure because I did anything I could do to protect my dad as well. So I would lie and say he's working, but he would sometimes be at home. And I would still be walking myself to a doctor's and getting myself blood work and taking in stool samples because I'd given myself an ulcer from so much stress. So, and internalizing so many different things. So I was very much alone. And I knew I needed to do something. And so I knew my why of why I was a good mom. I also knew my why of why I wasn't a great wife. I knew my why about why I like to eat all the time. I knew my why about a lot of things. But I didn't know my why about me. And so I made that decision on the mountain. I made the decision to say, have I ever given this like a wholehearted try? Like, I kind of sat back and wanted things to come to me. Yes, I put myself on hold. I didn't go to the college I wanted to because my dad wanted my help. I didn't go to Europe because I got pregnant. And now, in hindsight, I didn't have to do that. I could have went to Europe pregnant. Now, granted, my son was born with multiple heart defects and born premature. It might not have, it would have been a whole different experience there. Who knows what would have happened. I didn't have to get married. I didn't have to even keep the pregnancy. I didn't have to say yes to my dad. I could have went off to college as I wanted. And I went to a different college, a local one. I'm talking about I was supposed to go away to Florida to college, and live out something I wanted. And so it seemed like every time I was on this precipice of living out something I wanted, twofold. Maybe there was a little bit of fear inside of me. There was a little bit of fear about going to Europe, and there was a little bit about fear about moving across the country without my family, without everything I knew. And so I used those fears plus this compelling need to be liked, to do things right, to be good. And I let that guide me. And so when I got on that mountain, and thank God, I saw my kids in that moment, and thank God, I saw these future grandkids in that moment. And I said to myself, what if I really tried? Not this half-ass, like, yeah, I do things. Like, no, what if I really tried to get to know me? What if I really tried to, in a sense, date me? What if I tried to be kind and compassionate to myself? And not only tried, but like actually did it. Because what does Yoda say? Like, there is either do or you don't. There is no try, or something like that. And so in my journey, I really did try to erase that word try out of my vocabulary. I was working on it. I was practicing it. I'm not trying, right? I'm gonna experience it, experiment with it. Like, I really tried to I really worked on erasing that word from my vocabulary. And I'm going to tell you what, it was the biggest gift to me, because everything else that transpired after that, good, bad, or ugly, every relationship that I said goodbye to, and every relationship I've said hello to, every version of me, every exploration, every piece of me that got to go back in time and sit with that little girl who was in the closet, who got to sit with the little girl who just watched her mom attempt suicide, who got to sit with the mom, the 30-year-old version of me who was terrified of bridges and didn't know that if there was an event of some freak accident, if the car went over the bridge, what kid she was going to save first, and made something that was even more terrifying, even more, because she felt so responsible for taking care of everybody else. And I got to go back to these different versions of me that were so hurt, that were so scared, but at the end of the day was really just trying to get it right, was really trying to be good and seen and loved and heard. And so finding my why. So I finally found my why in my health journey. And it helped me so much. And I say it because it came naturally. It wasn't like one day I sat down, I'm like, I'm finding my why, and I'm not getting up out of the seat until I find it. No, it came, right? And I saw me with my grandkids, because I love my grandma. If you can have a soulmate that's not like your mate, that, hands down, it's my grandma. Like, I, have a very beautiful relationship with her. It's similar to the relationship in some ways to my son, with my son Dylan, where it's like you could just look at one another and you start like you just know something, that you cannot see, feel, touch, or hear. It's in here. It's in your heart. It's in your soul. You just know. And like talking about it, like I feel like she's here with me. So if you believe that stuff, great, you're going with me. If you don't, just tune that sentence out. But my grandma, it was like my soulmate. And so this idea that I could be that relationship with my grandchild, that I could be the grandma, and it just gave me this motivation to be like, yeah, I got it. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna work hard to be healthy. And yeah, I can't, there's no promises or guarantees. I don't, get in a car accident or something wonky happens, but I'm gonna do everything I can in my power to ensure that I get to have that experience. And not only I do, because I've had it, but that they get to have that experience with me as well. And so I knew that why. And so I'm spending today and this week and some time, because again, like it doesn't come just because I sit down, but really thinking about and brainstorming about my why on this business, about the why, how can I serve you? What is it I can do to turn this hobby into a business and why is that important to me? And so this is what I'm working on. And what I'm encouraging you to work on today is to consider your why. I don't want you to just sit down on a piece of paper and start thinking about your why. If that works for you, great. But just have it. Have it something that you're thinking about. Have it something that you're just open, and the answers will start to come to you when you have that open mindedness and you're telling the universe, I'm seeking my why. I want to know my why. And you'll find a lot of things that are your why nots, right? But I want you to really, really hone in and start thinking about your why. So that is my project for you today, to start thinking about your why. And if you know your why, I want you to get really specific with it. I want you to see it, feel it, touch it. Like when I'm talking to you about my grandchildren, like it brings me tears to my eyes. So I say all this to say, please today, give yourself a big smile. If you've ever been a bully to yourself, it is time you become your best buddy. You are besties with yourself. And so give yourself a big smile and give yourself a compliment. My compliment today is, I am really glad that I am discovering my why. I am so glad that I understand it's not just, I know my why. There's many different areas of your life that require why. There's many different phases of life that you're in, and what might have been your why one day may not be it the next. And so really keep an open mind and use that why to motivate you on those days when you are feeling a little more challenged. And so I would also love it if you can go out there today, give someone else a big smile and give them a compliment. Today, my buddy George at the Costco checkout, he and I appreciated him so much for his energy. He had a great smile, and he had this appreciation for looking outside his office window and seeing all the clouds and the blue skies, and we were just admiring the green hills together. So George, I loved complimenting and talking with you today. Please have a wonderful day. Share your joy, share your gifts. I love that. We are just little ripples in this beautiful world for the time that we're here. So, mwah, bye.